What's going on, everybody? Coach MccDann here. Lots of characters in Smash Ultimate utilize their unique abilities to get the most benefit out of their playstyle. So today, we're going to be going over the Trapper archetype and go into great detail on what prioritizing these abilities can do to assure your position as a dominant competitive player. When observing evaluating the other archetypes that are available, only very few archetypes have had the same type of overlap. There's a good reason as to why some characters still identify as one specific archetype over something similar, and this same scenario applies to the characters you'll see in the Trapper archetype characters. Trapper characters are similar in a way that Zoner characters operate, as characters in this archetype allow a player to rely on their unique specials to aggress from far distances, as well as maintain space away from their opponents as much as they choose. But before we go any further, let's get you familiarized to some characters first with a little warm-up. Pick 1 to 3 characters you see on screen right now and play up to 3 games with them. After that, we'll dive into all the details. Although Trapper characters don't necessarily rely on projectiles to get them all the benefit throughout a match, it certainly plays a much larger role than you might think. Trapper projectiles act much differently than Zoner projectiles, in the sense that these projectiles vary between each character much differently. A Zoner character's projectile is usually thrown in a direction and oftentimes used to help with approaches that those specific characters usually can't make on their own to begin with. But with Trapper characters, these abilities go hand in hand with the character's attacks and plays a secondary role that an opponent can usually forget to pay attention to. That almost always sets up for another opportunity to make some attacks that much more beneficial. Let's use King K. Rool as an example here. His neutral special attack, the Blunderbuss, has the ability to shoot a cannonball to help protect himself against an opponent who typically lands in front of him. This is a great option if done safely, but has enough vulnerability to be punished if an opponent notices it's a habit. So, knowing this, King K. Rool can utilize this move to punish approaching opponents on and off stage to mix things up, because as the opponent begins to focus on not getting hit by the cannonball, the second factor not taken into account is the vacuum ability that can lead into a massive punish if the opponent still lands into it, making this attack more of a trap, hence the name of this archetype. When playing against characters in this archetype, half the battle is understanding the placement of their projectiles alongside actually fighting them in battle. You might think that Snake is an aggressive fighter throughout a game due to his multi-hit moves and kill options, but did you take into account how many grenades and C4s were used throughout the match? These types of things are all important to pay attention to when it comes to learning how to fight against a Trapper character. So from now on, you could distinguish that Trapper characters use their projectiles for setups for even greater attack options, and Zoners typically use their projectiles to enter or dismiss themselves from interactions. So, now that we can safely say all the benefits that Trapper characters have, let's get into some details about what their weaknesses are. One thing that Trapper and Zoner characters have in common is the ability to either rely on or not rely on enough of some of the tools that are given to them. While Trapper characters create situations for themselves to set up for much larger bouts of damage towards their opponents, it relies on the opponent to set themselves up in a way to get punished by those attacks and abilities to begin with. Avoidance is a huge factor when playing against a Trapper character when it comes to their weaknesses. If any character relies on interactions to get the most benefit, then an opponent refusing to put themselves in situations to get punished will make for a much more intense match, as this allows both players to wait out for whiffed attacks and abilities to either respond with an attack, shield the attempt, or grab to start their own attacks. Keep this in mind as you learn more about each character in this archetype. Alright, we just went over the Trapper archetype. This will help you determine going forward what a match will seem like involving these characters in the future once you come across them in battle. Playing 3 to 5 games against a CPU level you're comfortable with, as well as selecting a character from this category you've played the least of, will not only build your knowledge on that character matchup, but allow you to get a general understanding of how all characters in this archetype perform.